Hey, Kevin,
Yeah, Daryl.
what do you reckon about flying?
Oi, Tess! Stop bloody bouncing your sister into the coral tree! Bloody caviar. Sorry. What were you saying?
I was just talking about flying.
Oh, right. Why?
Oh, I don't know. I just think it might be really interesting to see the world from that angle.
Wait, are you saying you want to fly?
Well, maybe.
But you're an egg.
Yeah, I know, but I could wear a helmet or something.
Oi, Tess! Stop putting the bloody decorative pebbles up your nostrils! Look, Daz, I just don't think eggs are meant to fly, mate. Ow! Tess, what did I just say?
Oopsie.
Flight Simulator, where you can fly anywhere you can dream of, as long as you are not an egg. Please verify that you are not an egg.
Melanie, do you reckon I can have a go at flying your kite?
I don't know, Daryl. Isn't it illegal for eggs to fly or something?
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I wouldn't actually be flying myself. I would just be, holding your
Oi,
kite,
babes.
which is-
Is this egg bothering you? Because I'll end him if he is.
No, sorry, I was just...
Oh my god, that's like so romantic.
Melanie, your kite.
Oh, wow.
All right, Humpty Dumpty. Do you know why you're here?
I tried to fly.
You try to fly. And do you know what happens when eggs try to fly?
They have fun.
This is the third time this year you've tried something like this. What's going on, Daryl? Look, you're a good guy, Daryl. I'm gonna let you off with a warning. But this is the last time, okay? You should really get some help, mate.
Egg. A vessel for housing tiny embryonic life forms that have evolved over millions of years to live in complete symbiotic harmony with one another. But can eggs fly? Yes, I think they can.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today with me I have Anders and Daniel from River End Games. So, without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to them, let them introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves. Anders, let's go ahead and start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Anders Heidenberg, working at River End Games as a creative director. Worked with games for, well, a long time. Started out as an artist and then quickly became intrigued with what everyone else was doing, whether it be game design, project management, level design, programming, and yeah, you. But towards now, I decided that game design kind of encompasses everything in one nutshell. So I'm really happy working in that field. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Fantastic to have you here. And then, of course, we have Daniel. Tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Yes, hello. My name is Daniel Lundqvist. I'm a senior artist at the River End Games. And I've also been working with games for about 15 years, I think. I've started doing smaller games, some mobile games with friends, mostly with 2D art. And then it's escalated with the 3D animation, characters. And now I mostly work with the environment and art dressing.
Very cool. All right. Well, I am super excited to dig into what y'all have brought for us today. I know I have gotten a little bit of a sneak peek before everyone else. I know it's unfair, but unbiased, I am super incredibly excited about it because it is amazing. So I will hand it back over to y'all to walk us through what you're going to show us today.
Thank you, Tina. And yeah, we at River End, we're a small company. I think we're 17 people, maybe. Daniel, you?
Yeah.
And some consultants to help us out as well. And we're working on our first game, Eriksholm, The Stolen Dream. And Eriksholm is a story-driven stealth puzzle game. And yeah, the screenshot here is from the game, and as you can see that the camera is quite kind of third-person-y and zoomed out. So cinematics for us is very important because being a story-driven game, we have a lot of moments where we want to see the expressions on people's faces. And early on, when I kind of talked about cinematics for this, everyone I talked to would say, "Don't do it, Anders. Don't do cinematics." And I kind of replied that, well, I'll just do cinematics even harder, or something as mature as that. So we started out like, we know nothing about cinematics, but it's probably a great idea to do them. And then gradually had to learn the hard way how to manage that. But today we're going to talk about kind of everything from script writing all the way over to sound mixing, with everything in between of creating characters, animating, using MetaHumans, and all of that. And at the end, I hope we can answer any questions people may have along the way. But we're going to show a little cinematic just shortly, but before that, just as an introduction, the whole game takes place in Eriksholm, where our main character Hanna lives with her little brother Herman, in the kind of poorest neighborhood of the city, Cutter's Hill. And this used to be a really kind of proud neighborhood of shipbuilders and mast cutters, but since the advent of steamships and steam technology, it's kind of been unemployment and gradually has become one of the poorest neighborhoods of the city. But Hanna and Herman have each other, and they have a really strong bond. And as the game starts, Hanna has just recovered from a serious illness. I mean, in and out of consciousness, sick. So Herman's, of course, very relieved to see his sister recover and decides to head to work finally. But for some reason, he doesn't come home that night. So what we're going to see now is the next morning.
We're coming in. What's the hole?
Officer?
It's just you here.
And you?
Where's your brother?
He's working.
And where's work?
Green Rock Mines? He should be back by now.
Really?
Yeah.
Look. He's not in any trouble. We just want to talk to him.
Okay.
Maybe you could help. You wouldn't mind coming down the station with us, would you?
Why?
Just sort a few things out.
No, we can sort him out here. I haven't done anything. All right, I'll get my bag.
Good. Hey. Hey. She's gone. Find her before she leaves the building.
Oh.
Oh,
So,
amazing.
So we're a small company, and we make these in-house. We have 2 consultants as well helping out with things related to these. But yeah, just a little background about the company. We started about 5 years ago almost, and the whole premise of the company was basically with the right mix of people, then perhaps a really small team can make something that's pretty cool. And many of us kind of come from big games companies, and I have a similar background. And working on big games is great, and we've had, a tremendous time doing that. But often when a game came out, it would be like, yeah, and now things are great and we have millions of players. And it just seemed surreal because we had no connection to them at all. It's a number. Yeah, this is a number. It can't be. It can't be that many people actually playing the game. And it was weird. And later on, as I started making my own games in my own company, I started handling support email as well. And then suddenly getting that kind of constant feed of stories from people's lives, it blew me away. It was just so amazing to see in what way something I had made had just moved someone across the planet. And it would be like stories of grandmothers who had realized they were gamers and can now kind of play with their grandchildren in a completely different way. Or a couple of months ago, I got an email that I loved where a guy said, yeah, when I was in college, I used to play your game when I went on dates with my girlfriend at the time. And it was like our thing we did on dates. And now we're married, we have children, but it's still our thing to play your game. And we just wanted to thank you for that. And it just felt like this is what it's about, to create something that means something. And I was showing Daniel earlier some emails of people like, yeah, I wish you would do a sequel for this game because it was such an important part of my childhood. It was like, yeah, I do feel old reading that, but it was just, it felt really cool. And when we started Riverend, we kind of sat down and talked about this, and we all felt like this is what we should do. This is what it should be all about in this company, which can make us difficult to work with for someone who kind of finances the whole thing. But I mean, I think that in the end, everyone benefits. You create something that can come from our hearts, and I think that can really resonate with people. And yeah, hopefully the people can get their money back. But let's get started, shall we? And the first thing is, if you want to do a cinematic, you start with a script. And I think that George Clooney said that it's possible for me to make a bad script or a bad movie out of a good script, but I can't make a good movie from a bad script. So yeah, according to internet, George Clooney at one point said this.
I believe you.
But the meaning of it is quite true, and that's where we always begin. And we have our writer Andreas Roman, who writes all the dialogue and all the cinematics and the story for us. And we have like a team of 3 people that we work together. So he writes everything, and then we're 3 people to kind of massage that and kind of come with feedback from different angles. And I think it was let me see, it was Ron Howard, I think, who had that as a thing that he did, that he had the squad of 3 to make decisions, where he said that, yeah, 1 person is a lonely island, 2 people can argue and never reach any conclusions, but 3 people, you can always, if there's any kind of one leaning in one direction and the 2 in the other, then you can make a decision and move on. So we kind of took that to heart, and at different stages, different people are involved. But I think that's it's a good practice too. And what Andreas does is he puts together a scene with everything he wants in it, the beats, and has some dialogue and everything to kind of convey everything he wants. But he doesn't care about the length and the size or anything like that, because the next step is, once that's done, then you trim it down. And the purpose of that is, I mean, from one perspective, yes, you do save time and money by having a shorter cinematic. But the other perspective is that if the fewer words or actions you can use without losing the meaning and conveying the same thing, then the more weight each of those carries and the more impact they carry as well. So it's a good exercise to trim what you have, even though the words landed perfectly that time. Trim it to a size where it's as impactful as possible. And it's the same with copywriting, I would say. But that's kind of what we start with. And I think that Linda Seeger, who wrote a book, Making a Good Script Great, something, and she had some examples of how she works with this field. Like, people have scripts, and she is a script doctor who fixes them and tries to make them as impactful as possible. And she talked about a scene in the old movie The Witness that is not a very current reference, but where Harrison Ford solves a crime in an Amish country, and at the end he has a love interest that he's developed in this Amish woman. And there's a scene there where they confess their love to each other, and it ends with them kissing. And she looked at that scene, and it felt like, yeah, something's not, it's the final scene, it's an important scene. How can we convey this as good as possible? And in the end, what she ended up with was Harrison Ford comes through the door, the woman comes down the stairs, they look at each other, and then they kiss. It's like, yeah, let's just get rid of all of the dialogue here and just go for the kiss. And it's like, yes, that really nailed that scene, because then everything's kind of just in the viewer's mind instead of them talking too much about it. But once you have a script and you are happy with that, then you need actors to act it out. And yeah, you can see that one of our actors has a very round and black head, and one one of the things that when you hire actors, you usually do that for movies, and there's a clause there in the contract where you pay to use the likeness of this actor. And since our actors, we don't use their likeness in the game, then we haven't paid for this. So we asked them, like, could we just use this for a presentation? And they're like, yeah, I'm sure you can. So yeah, it's going to be like this here and there throughout the presentation. The mystery actors that we use. But we decided to use a casting director to find the talent for the whole game. And this was a very good idea, because before that we had worked with different agencies, and working with an agency can be very good, but they can only recommend people who they kind of who are in their stable or whatever it's called. But it's kind of like a bank financial advisor giving you good advice on what to do with your money. Like, oh, you don't say that I should give you the money. That's very good and sound advice, keeping my best interest in mind. But a casting director will look at everyone, and it's their job to just know who is available, who's good, who's easy to work with, who can do this particular type of character quite well, what's their price point, and everything like that. And for us, the casting director we use, she delivered hundreds of videos, audition tapes from all kinds of actors, and we could just browse through them and find whoever we liked most for each scene. And that was super good. And it was funny that when the whole casting process was done and we had found the people that we wanted for each role, they called for a meeting between the casting director and the actors and me, which I found was like, that's very strange. But I think the purpose of the meeting was for the actors to kind of pay some tribute or respect to the casting director, which was also super weird but I realized in the meeting that they're kind of gods in the acting industry, where they decide who is put in front of what important kind of director or producer, and the actors were, I hadn't seen them nervous up until this point, and everyone was kind of a bit squeamish, and they were like, okay, yes. And I think someone said they called her mum, which is kind of a way for British actors to refer to their queen. So it was like, yeah, okay, so she's the queen then. But once we found the actors that we wanted to work with, we had to start creating characters. And one of those methods is to start scanning. And that's where we started. And this was before MetaHumans was available. So we don't use the likeness, like I said. And I think that is super cool, because suddenly you start hiring actors after their ability to portray the character that you have on paper. And it doesn't matter if they have like the wrong hair color or the wrong height for that role. They can do it. If they can act it, then they can do it. And then you can choose what they should look like. Well, if you scan, then based on what someone else looks like. So then there was a new casting process to find the people that you wanted to scan. And this was kind of new to us and everyone else in the world, I think. So it turns out that it's not so easy to just scan people and then have a contract saying, is it okay to use our likeness? Because scanning someone counts as biometric data, which is only available to like hospitals, according to like GDPR. So we had to write a contract where they waived that right to us. And then it's like, oh yeah, and we used lawyers for this, but the lawyers were also kind of like, I'm not sure this is the way to do it because no one's ever done it, and GDPR is kind of new. And then we were like, yeah, and then we have minors that we're gonna have. It's like, oh, so biometric data from minors. I mean, they love the work, but it's kind of sketchy maybe. And then the actual scanning process. And as you see on this image here, this glowing orb of light is a scanning rig. And we're like, oh, that looks really nice. How much are they? I think $400,000. Where we kind of decided, well, let's not buy that because we don't really have that kind of money. And then we found companies that would offer this service. And we would find a company and they would say, yeah, we can scan. We have a super nice glowing ball you can put people in. And how much is that? Yeah, but we do the whole service. We create a very magnificent rig for you. And it's going to be 40,000. Is that all right? It's like, oh, for all our characters? Maybe that's okay. So no, for one character. Are they going to speak as well? It's like, yeah. Oh, then it's 80. Like, okay, 80,000 per character. It's like, never in a million years are we going to pay that. So we decided that maybe we could just get the raw data out of like if you just open the doors, because this was COVID times and everyone tried to kind of get whatever money they can. And they said, okay, if we just open the doors, you get the raw data, we don't make a rig, then $20,000 a day. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of money. So we said, let's just buy our stuff from the internet. That's a lot cheaper. And we found this place, for example, that had great scans that you could put together, and they had all kinds of facial expressions to create a pretty solid FACS rig. And then we started on that path only to realize other people are also doing this. And we saw a trailer where, I don't know, with some general speaking to his man is like, wait, that's our main character. What's he doing in someone else's trailer? It's like, this isn't working. So we of course did what any sane person would do at this point. We built our own scanning rig without knowledge beforehand. How hard can it be, right? And it's kind of funny that talking to a bunch of different people from different companies trying to sell them or sell you their services, you after a while the biz dev people kind of don't want to be in the meeting anymore, and they leave you with a technician that love to talk about stuff. And when you love to talk about stuff and they do, then suddenly secrets seem to be revealed because you're just so eager to talk about the stuff you love. And each company has someone who is in love with their scanning rig. And then it's like, so what kind of cameras do you use? How do you set that up? And the lenses, how do you work with that? And so on. And in the end, we found like a deal. Someone had mislabeled the pricing on like an electronics outlet had mislabeled like without VAT, but with VAT. So we could get cameras really cheaply. And this rig has 38 of them, which is kind of a maybe bare minimum for what we were doing. And then there was another discount, another electronics store saying, yeah, we're selling 50 millimeter lenses. So we bought all of them, which made them think that we were from some competitor company trying to buy up their stock and sell it, which was fine. But in the end, I think we managed to get this together at around $13,000. And the results were really good. But it was time consuming, and moving it around was pretty difficult. and one of our artists' stepdad did the soldering for the rods as well. So everyone got involved in this process, which was kind of cool, but a time-consuming process. But we got something that was kind of like, yeah, this is looking pretty good. I think that we could probably work with this. And then that's the day the MetaHumans came out. So I'll let you take over from here, Daniel.
Yes. So that brings us to MetaHumans, and I remember when the first version of MetaHuman dropped, and I had just learned the quite elaborate scanning rig or pipeline that we had. And safe to say, it was a bit intimidating to work with, and I could see there was going to be a lot of work ahead of us on each character. So, like a blessing from the sky, here was this tool that could pretty much do like 90% of the work for us. No, not really, but we saw the huge potential in MetaHumans. But the big question was if we could use MetaHumans for our main characters. And so one of the first tests we did with MetaHumans was to use it as a base rig and then applying our scanned faces by using morph targets. But this was quite elaborate, having to transfer the topology and so on. And the faces tended to break when you push the limits of the controls, as you can see. And this was before Epic had released their scans to MetaHuman tool. So we were just trying everything, basically. But at the same time this was going on, I was getting to know the MetaHuman creator, and I tried to push its limits of what you could do. And I started to come up with some quite interesting faces. These three are Hanna, Alva, and Madame Quist. So the thought popped into our heads that maybe we could use MetaHumans. So we kept on going. So once we had the potential candidates for our characters, we needed to try out the expressiveness of the MetaHuman rig. So me and an animator at the time worked on an animation test where we used a captured snippet from a masterclass video with her name is Diane von Furstenberg, just to try to get a similar voice and expression to what we were looking for in this character Quist. I can't really show the clip, oh, it's funny, but it was a good exercise trying to learn face tracking techniques and trying to capture the essence of Diane. And the results showed great promise, so we kept on going. And here's some more examples of exploring different characters, this time more the not so good, the bad and the ugly, evil guys in our games. And it's quite amazing what you can get from scratch with MetaHumans in regards to the shaders and the general quality of the MetaHuman data. Even though later on we did add some custom details and blemishes to the final MetaHumans. But it goes to show that the baseline variety is really quite good. So at this point we were happy with the results and basically decided to scrap all the work we had done with the scan rig and all the scan faces and switch to only using MetaHumans. But now we only needed bodies, and the stock MetaHuman bodies and shirts are nice, but not really what we needed. And we're still waiting on the MetaHuman cloth creator tool. But until then, we decided to go with scanned clothing. And like Anders mentioned, we're a small studio, and we still needed to finish our actual game, so we couldn't put too much time into this. So we needed a quick way to get high fidelity clothing that really worked up close in our cinematics. And there's simply nothing better than scanning. And since we had some experience with it, and we worked with the faces, and we have done a test scan with the police costume before, It was a bit uncharted territory, but we had a grasp of it. And I guess now we only need to have a good plan of how to acquire all of these clothes, basically. And unfortunately, today's fast fashion doesn't really breathe late 1800s quality and design. So we needed to find clothes elsewhere. I think we talked to a professional seamstress, but that was quickly off the table. It was just going to be way too expensive. And we also looked into renting some clothes, but the offer was very limited, and yeah, it didn't look anything like our concept. And we wanted to stay true to that.
And we went to the Gothenburg State Theater, or the City Theater as well. During COVID, it was completely closed down, and I think that we bribed our way in with some cinnamon buns and a basket of cookies, and they said you can just have your pick in our wardrobe, and it's like a massive archive in there. But it's like half of it was prison outfits for Les Miserables, or like, yeah, that's kind of not what we're going for, and all of these kind of whimsical costumes and whatnot. But we actually found a police uniform there, which is an actual Swedish military uniform from the late 1800s. So that fit well, but yeah, it's kind of slim pickings after that.
Yeah. But then a quite cool thing happens, kind of stars aligned opportunity. There was a sewer or a seamstress school in Sweden called Tillskärarakademin på svenska, on Swedish. That was looking for a project for their last year students to do as their final exam. And yeah, they usually.
And this is a school where they teach how to make theater costumes and movie costumes.
Yeah. And they had never worked with games before, let alone like scanning clothes. So this was a great opportunity for both us and them. And yeah, a couple of meetings later, trying to convince the headmaster that this was a great idea with no potential issues at all. The project was a go.
What can go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so these are some concepts that were created for us by artist called Miguel Iglesias. So before we could get started, we needed to figure out a way to, bring these concepts into reality. And the students had a lot of questions, like what kind of fabric we could use, questions regarding shapes and cuts in clothing, and I had no idea about this.
You just answered everything immediately.
Yeah.
Coming from, yeah.
Just looked at them, and then I Googled. And a lot of question about wear and tear, because obviously they were creating these beautiful clothes, and then are we supposed to cut holes in them, or so questions about the patina, and we ended up doing a lot of wear and tear and things like that in post afterwards. And then there were questions about body types and sizes as well. But yeah, and to complement the concepts, we worked a lot with the references, as one should, and very important. This helped the student bridge the gap between the digital concepts and reality. We talked about shows like Downton Abbey and Gilded Age, which was great references, and it gave the students more meat on the bone. But then we got started, and we had regular meetings at the school, looking at fabric samples, checking in on the progress, and answering questions. And I remember there was a lot of worries about certain fabrics, if they were going to work with scanning. And so to ease their mind, we did like test shoots with just wrapping like a mannequin head in fabric, just to try out how it would scan. And another big worry was the mannequins. They had, mostly torsos, but they needed to create the arms and the legs. So it was a bit tough to get the anatomy right. But and also, I mean, because we needed to have the arms a bit upright to be able to scan underneath the arms and in the crotch. So that's those things that we needed to solve as well. And I did some quick do's and don'ts for them in terms of scanning and clothing. Basically, to not use a very dark and light fabric, especially combined, like doing a classic penguin suit, in black and white. That's going to be very hard to scan. This is so you can avoid the loss of detail in the blacks and in the highlights. And don't use shiny and reflective object or fabrics. Don't use transparent fabrics, and avoid very thin, protruding fabrics. There was talk about using like lace, and that's not going to work when you scan, or it can, but it's very difficult. And use fabrics with rich texture and good patterns. It helps a lot when trying to solve and doing the model. And try to pose as natural as possible. And yeah, as I mentioned, having the arms and legs a bit spread so you can get full coverage. And all the characters got specified sizes and body types to make sure they would fit our characters in the game or in the cinematics. And 2 of the costumes were actually custom fitted to our colleague, Lynn-Marie, for potential cosplay purposes. I think we have Alva and Quist could potentially be in cosplays later on, which is pretty cool. And for accessories like the holster there and belts, the student hunted them down in vintage shops and marketplaces. And before the big shoot, we started doing test shots with the clothes that were finished early. We shot it at the school. And when this whole project started, we initially thought of using our scan rig that we have built. But it turned out the task of just transporting all of the clothing and the mannequins to our office, and then we wouldn't have any help setting them up, was just too much of a hassle. So yeah, we decided to do the shoot at the school, so the student could help out with the prepping of the clothes and so on. So we went with the single camera setup and a tripod. We had a light setup of 4 strobe lights and IKEA sheets as diffusers, and they are
It's got to
great.
be IKEA.
Yeah, because they're very cheap and therefore very thin, so it lets a lot of light through.
Don't buy expensive sheets; they won't work.
No.
They're too, yeah.
No 1,000 thread count. It should be cheap as possible.
And we actually tried this when we had our scanning rig transported over to Stockholm to scan some people. We were in a photo studio, and they had equipment that was very expensive. And we tried diffusers of every brand they had in there to just get that perfect, soft, even albedo, but nothing even compared to the IKEA sheets. It was the perfect diffuser with our kind of shitty secondhand strobe lights that we got off the internet. It was, nothing can compare to the brute force of strobe lights and IKEA sheets.
Yeah. And speaking of cheap solutions, you can probably see there we actually because the woman, the female characters had stands that worked, but many of the male characters we needed to actually hang them up in the ceiling, and then to anchor them, we anchored the legs with just heavy objects we could find that they had at school, like old vintage steam iron, for example. But it works surprisingly well when you just anchored it properly, so it stayed static.
Is there any specific brand of antique steam iron that you would recommend for this task?
Yeah, I can.
For the audience, I mean.
I can look it up. Yeah, and I remember the big shoot. It was very hectic. We had very limited time for using the room, but the students were very helpful, and they just kept bringing the next one, and out setting them up. So it's a really fun day. But I was completely exhausted that day because we borrowed Anders' Nikon camera, which is quite heavy, and doing a couple of thousand shots in a day, going around the clothing. It was hard work, but a lot of fun.
And you used a wide angle lens for that shoot, right? Like a 24 mil.
Yes.
And that's a good thing to do as well. If you have a high megapixel camera, which this was, I think it's 46, it means that you don't have to go so close. And then you get very nice overlap when you're scanning. If you do a 50 millimeter and have to go really close, you can easily lose yourself in all the parts of the costume and then, miss out on the data.
Yeah. Some more detailed shots when I started to examine the scan data. And there were a few anomalies, like this fly who had been pestering the chute, decided to land on the clothing. So, it might be in on one of the scans in the back that you don't see as an Easter egg. No, we removed them. But yeah, that's kind of fun things when you don't notice when you shoot, and then or you start to look through everything and like, what the hell is that?
Classic.
That was fun. So here's the complete roster of costumes and many gigs of scan data. And all in all, I think it was a very successful project, both for us and the students who really showed great interest into scanning. And I mean, this could be a potential future line of work for them, I would say, not just only working with movies or scene costumes and so on. I mean, other studios could do this. So it's very, very fun. And all in all, I think the cost was about $5,000 for the whole project.
20 costumes for $5,000 custom made. It's hard to beat that price.
So we basically only paid for the fabrics, right? Mannequins. And for processing data, we used Metashape, and some quick takeaways from this process is obviously shooting raw, and the more coverage and data you have, the better. And work in sequences, doing loops, trying to get into a rhythm while shooting. If you do handle shooting, moving an even distance. Delete blurry photos before trying to process. Otherwise, you might have issues. And also to pre-process the raw shots and try to bring up the details in the shadows and mute the highlights so you have an even, flat, diffuse color as possible. Another truly fun part started with processing the scan data and generating the meshes. I mean, it's a bit like harvesting your crops, and you finally get to taste those sweet apples or tomatoes, seeing it come to life in the computer. Here's another example of the cook in our game, which we never really used for cinematics, but a lot of the costumes we used for in-game characters as well. Another good example of great detail and patterns on this costume, making it very easy to process. For some characters, we also did multiple scans. We removed the coats and details, and sometimes we only shot the legs and the pants to make it easier to process later on. And the anatomy on this character wasn't fantastic because of the mannequins, but I mean, that was fixable in post. But if we were to do this again, I would probably try to have a really good bodysuit with good anatomy to save some time. But even if you have good anatomy, there's still some work to be done here when we started fitting the clothes to the MetaHuman's body and pose. And not to mention doing the retopology. That's a big topic of its own. So I'm not going to go into that. That's a big rabbit hole. But yeah. So one after another, our metahumans were getting pinned down, and the bodies were getting processed and ready. And here's a shot of the first set of cinematic characters, happily crashing my computer, all of them together. A pro tip or a noob tip maybe is, depending on how you see it, is to have good graphics cards and sufficient video memory, because it can be quite intense working with cinematics and metahumans, and all of them have grooms and use the highest LOD and all of that. So that's a good point. And most of our characters actually use standard metahuman grooms, but we felt that our main character needed a custom groom. So we worked with a hair artist called Johan Litval to get Hanna's hair exactly the way we wanted. Can probably mention that Johan Litval has, you talked about this, Anders. He has
it was
amazing hair. It's funny.
It's funny. It's funny because I mean, first of all, he loved working on Hanna because he said that none of my clients ever asked me to do messy hair. Everyone wants perfect hair, and I went on a call with him to discuss like a new groom he was making, and I realized like the guy has perfect henna hair. It's like, whoa, are you ready for a photo shoot? And I commented on this, and he said, oh, what, this? No, I mean, this is afternoon hair. You should have seen me this morning. It was like, but I mean, he's a terrific guy and really talented. I just think it's so cool that someone just does hair for a living. It's the future.
It's like a hairdresser. You don't trust them unless they have good hair, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's an insurance thing. Yeah, and there's when we got the groom, there's definitely like steps and knowledge that you need to know with using custom grooms. But Johan was very helpful, making sure the grooms was set up properly with binding assets and so on, making sure they worked. And this groom had 3 groups, so we could use different physics on them, like the braid could have its own physics and thin strands of hair in her forehead and so on. And yeah, and during the production, another big thing that dropped from Epic was Unreal Engine 5 and Lumen. So before we had done the cinematics in Unreal Engine 4. But yeah, it was a no-brainer for us to try out Lumen, and we did some initial tests on our characters and our first scene. And pretty quickly, I mean, we realized that we should go with Lumen, because also our cinematics aren't, they're not real time, they're pre-rendered, so there's no performance issues. We could do whatever we want, basically.
That was a lifesaver, lighting these scenes, because from shot to shot we move things around, and we move so we can get the highlights where we want them, and we can get that pop in the eye. And I mean, in this scene, you see like boards in the window casting shadows onto characters. We can just move those around from shot to shot, make sure that the shadow lands exactly where we want it. So yeah, definitely Lumen was the way to go with these cinematics.
Yeah, this was the first scene that we converted to Unreal Engine 5 and Lumen. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the quality of the lighting and the possibility to iterate in real time was a great time saver for us. And also, while creating the environments, we worked closely with our main cinematics animator to have proper staging and lighting. We used a lot of Megascans assets and also some in-game assets that we just bumped up the textures to use in the cinematics. But these was mostly in the background. No, often quite blurred. But then we also created, some really high quality cinematics assets as well, especially when characters interact with them when they're really up close. And I think that's it for me. And I think Anders is going to talk more about how we brought this whole thing to life.
I'll go to the next performance capture. This was a very intimidating thing for me because I knew we'd hired a bunch of great actors, and I'm not a great director. I mean, I've directed VO before, but this was something completely different. And all of these were seasoned kind of veteran actors, having worked on some pretty big things. And I knew that the second I stepped into the room, they would see that I'm not a real director, you know. But we kind of thought about this: should we hire a director, or how should we work with it with this? And we felt like there's a danger to hiring a director as well, because in a hiring process, everyone's going to say that they're a great director, and we don't know, and it may be too late once you hire someone. But it also can be like, this is a great director, but they may have a different kind of style, or they're taking it in a different direction, and they may not know enough about the game to make it match what we've created in game. So we decided, like, I'm gonna take a shot at it and see if it works. Because if anything, I can tell if it's good or bad, and I know what we need. But it actually turned out quite well. The actors were super helpful with me, and it was a good choice to hire great actors that can make decisions based on what their characters are, and that I can see the results and just come with adjustment things that were necessary sometimes. But most of the time that wasn't necessary. It was more of a quality control thing to make sure, like, I think that was a really nice scene. So that worked out quite well, and we shot everything in London. And because all our actors are from the London area, because we knew that would be where we would shoot it. And we made sure to get a motion capture studio that had a sound stage, so that you can record final sound. Because then you don't have to go to dubbing afterwards and hope that it will be as good as you remember it. So that was a really big thing, and it was such a relief for me knowing that once we have a scene, we have it. We don't have to go to another place and hope to get it once again. And another thing was James Cameron had a masterclass where he talked about his work on Avatar. And I've never worked in movies, so I don't know what it's like. But he said that one thing that was a great opportunity working with performance capture was that you can get the whole scene. In movies, you have to take like a close-up shot and then cut to another shot. You can't have cameras in the way. You need to change the lighting. So you can't do an entire scene in just one shot. I mean, depending on your style, of course. But he found it terrific that he can just get everything locked in, and all the reactions would match because it's the same performance altogether. So we took that to heart, and it worked terrifically, unless the scene is longer than 3 or 4 minutes, because then it's like, okay, any mistake at any point, it's like, okay, well, start over back. Where were we? Oh, that was ages ago. And then as we progress and everything is like, my God, it's going perfectly. It's going perfectly. And then actors start to get nervous. It's like, shit, are we going to make it? Oh, I stumbled. It's like, whereas if you just go for a close-up, it's like, say these 3 lines and then we'll cut. Then it's, you can save one piece at a time. But I think that once we did get these scenes and everything fit together, it did turn out really nicely. And I think that it got, the actors loved it. because they got this continuity throughout the whole scene that they would otherwise have to struggle with to get right. And I asked them afterwards, like, what was it like working with a noob like me? And they said that the pace was much slower than they're used to, but they loved that because that gave them time to just nail the performance for each of the scenes. And we made sure to have rehearsal days beforehand. So I think it was like one rehearsal day for 2 shooting days or something like that. Was it the other way around? Anyway, everyone was happy about the rehearsal time. So when we went into the studio, everyone knew what they were going to do. But the people in the studio also reacted quite positively and said that it's a rare thing to have someone come in and care so much about the quality. And it just became this nice production where the actors did their utmost, and we were very particular about the quality. And the people at Centroid felt that they could really make sure that everything was to their kind of top game as well. And they said that most people who come in here, they want quantity. They know it's expensive, so they're going to get, 60 minutes of footage in 2 days. And it's like, how do you even do that? Yeah, you just continue shooting. But yeah, also long scenes means that anything can go wrong on the technical side as well. There's a lot of technology going on while you're doing this. And it could be like, oh yeah, we lost the wireless control to the thingamajig. It's like, okay, why did we do that? No one knows. We're in London. There's masts everywhere and anything can happen at any time. Like, okay, when it's going to be back on? No one knows. And yeah, some nervousness related to that. But one of the things that I appreciated most about this whole process was, I mean, up until this point, we'd worked with the script, with the characters, went through all the iterations of everything, and you imagined what the characters were like. And then we started recording some video, and to some extent, characters came to life. But being in the performance capture on stage there, and just seeing the scenes acted out in front of you, it's like the characters came to life in a way that I was just completely surprised how amazing that was to see. It's like you can see your imagination play out in front of you, and it's real. And the actors were really good. So the next day, after shooting a quite dramatic scene, I woke up and my body just had this, like you remember last day, it's like, oh shit, it wasn't a dream, it was real, and it was pretty dramatic. It was like, oh wait, no, it was acting, but the body was like, no, I think it really happened. Like, shut up, body. But it goes to show that yeah, they can do a convincing performance. And then we have the facial capture, and that was a tedious process getting, because we tried out different software ourselves to test out the rigs and see what we can do. But we also knew that there was going to be a lot of work involved in this. So if we can get some help on that, that would be great. But all the companies we talked to, they're like, okay, let's sit down, let's have a meeting. And then you show up to the meeting and there's 10 people in the meeting. And my first reaction is like, this is going to be too expensive. If you put 10 people in a meeting, someone has to pay for those people. And as manager of this, manager of that. And it's like, just having this meeting, there's like $2,000 on your end. Who's going to pay for that? Well, it's going to be me paying for that. So after a few of those, we got a recommendation of this guy you see here, Sigtur, who runs the company Motion Grinder. That's 3 people. And when we called him up, it was just him telling us everything we needed to know. And it's like, oh, thank God. And the other advantage of working with individuals or very small companies like that is that that's the people you'll work with. If you work with a huge company, then it's like, oh, yeah, Netflix needed this. oh, who are we going to put our best people on? This small developer from Sweden that no one has ever heard of? No, I think we're going to put those good people on Netflix. And you know that bad hire? What are we going to do with yeah, let's put them on the small team. I think that, yeah, we can do some invoicing there. But Sigtor is amazing, and he also does his own head rigs. It's tricky to find good head rigs on the market, so he builds his own, which are, well, probably on par with whatever is best out there in the world. And his background is like from Weta and working on fancy stuff. And he builds those rigs with a dual camera setup, so that he can feed that into Epic software for processing the geometry and facial data. And the lenses he uses have very little distortion. So when an animator needs to polish the footage afterwards, they don't have to have this warped, like eyes pointing out in different direction. They can see the expression on the actor's face. Tremendously good. He maybe didn't appreciate so much the way we used his head rig. Like, yeah, we're gonna sleep on a pillow. It's like, no, my babies, they don't sleep on pillows. And yeah, but yeah, we didn't break anything, but you could see that he probably cared more about the head rigs than us in many occasions. But yeah, that attention to detail and quality is what led to good results. On the other hand, so we'll forgive him for that. And then let's see what. Yeah, that's another thing. Coming to life, the characters. One thing is for me to see the actors perform the different characters, but the other thing was to see the actors' reaction to seeing themselves embodied by a completely different, and they were freaked out, like freaked the hell out, because suddenly it's like their voice and their mimicry and their body movement, but it looks like someone else and it looks real. And they were like, I can't even watch it, but I can't stop watching it. And they were like, okay, can I just take a moment to kind of get all of this internalized? Because yeah, that was freaky as hell. Which yeah, I loved to see.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. That would be an incredibly bizarre experience.
Yeah, when it's like everything's there, all the nuances captured. And yeah, I can also say that we used pre-visualizations as well. It's like very rough mock-ups of, once we had the script, like this is what we do, this is how characters move about. And what that led to was that we could we knew how everyone would move, and then once we went to Centroid, they could build that to very minute detail. Like this table goes exactly here, and they can measure it with their motion capture equipment to see, yes, it's exactly on that centimeter, that corner of the table starts, and the bed is this long, and then this happens, and then that happens. And that means that artists can start on working on the environment while we're shooting, and then everything just plugs in towards the end. And then later on in the process is like, oh shit, but it's next week we're shooting, but we don't have, yeah, let's just wing it and see how that goes. And one advantage of winging it is that when you are on location working with the actors and you know approximately the type of space you have to work in, it's so much easier to make decisions when you see it in front of you. This is where she's sitting. So if he's going to go up, wouldn't it be a bit too close and crowded if he stands there? No, let him stand over here. And then you can move things about to make sure that it lands where it's supposed to land. And then Daniel put this slide in, and I decided to keep it because it's just, yeah, whenever you talk about anything that's done in a game, at the end it's like, oh yeah, and sound. And it was the exact same thing with the presentation. It's like, oh yeah, and sound. So I decided just to add that. but no, it's something that we are very fond of working with. So we have 3 people helping us out, consultants with sound and one with music. So Magnus Waltestad working as a sound director, and he works with Roman Jens, and we have Linas who works with Nordcurrent, our owners, and they work with the sound stuff. And that's just so crucially important, and not just getting like the VO sounding correctly with the right reverb for the situation, but also like the foley of the environment and getting all that to make the scene come alive, and then the mixing with the music. And I just have such great respect for how much music does. And working with Leif Jonsson on the music, who does all the music for our game, getting that right mix as well. Like, I want the music to be heard more, but now I can't hear the characters. Just having these professional people go like, no, this is where we'll put it, because you do want it here, but then we'll push it here, and now you get the results. Like, yes. So that's been tremendous working with those people. And then I believe that we're pretty much done with this, right? We would love to answer any questions that may have come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in.
What do you have for us, Tina?
There were a couple of really good ones, actually, so I'm pretty
it.
excited to. I got you now.
The easy ones that make us look knowledgeable. Can you do that?
So the first one here is, do you have any tips for creating, researching, or finding unique costumes for other people's characters, since you went through this whole process yourself?
That's for you, Daniel.
Take it away. Any tips for the folks at home?
Where would you start, Daniel?
Well, good question.
So this is they want to create a costume for someone else in 3D, yeah? And they want to have research on it. I would go to Pinterest, check out things. We've done a lot of that. We've also, when it's kind of fantastical things, we can use AI to just mock things up and find details. We've used Midjourney for some stuff to just see like, would it be like combining these two things that don't exist in real life? And then it never gives you anything you can use. It's just like, yeah, I like what they did with the collar there. And after a while, you have this Miro board of 500 images with a small little red circle in small areas on each image. And then you'll have to kind of either work with the concept artist or kind of figure it out on your own in your head on how to piece all of that together. But yeah, I'd say that we use Pinterest, and when Pinterest doesn't have it, then we can generate it. But it's more of a last resort because Pinterest contains generally better things.
Yeah, I mean, you look into, realistic stuff, reality, and also, of course, TV shows and so on. Usually people have been thinking about how a dress, works and functions and what works together and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, reality. That's awesome. Good advice. Yes. I feel like it's kind of similar when it comes to like creating interesting monsters or things like that too, right? Usually you want to look at different animals or things that do exist and then pull the pieces that actually work for what you're making. I feel like it's kind of a similar concept for this.
Yeah. So you capture the believability of something.
Right. Love that.
My old art director used to say that reality sucks, believability rocks. Doesn't need to be realistic, but it needs to be believable, and that you usually find in, if it's a monster, then look into how a crocodile functions, and works or whatever. Just
Right. Yeah. I love that
feels
phrase.
believable. Yeah.
I'm stealing that. That's incredible. Next question here for y'all is if you wanted to use something like lace or dark fabrics or the kinds of fabrics that you found were awful for scanning, but you knew that in the actual game you wanted something that did look like that, would you recommend just starting with a base fabric that is more scan friendly and then adjusting it manually on the model later, or how would you go about that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we did with we had like a butler costume that we used in game as well, and that was pretty much it was yeah, the main costume was like gray pretty much, and then a lighter gray for the shirt. It's very easy to mask it off and make it darker in post with the texture. So definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Next question here starts with a compliment, so that's nice. Your team sounds not only incredibly adaptable, but also very brave for diving into new techniques head first. How do you strike the balance between trying new things and pushing through challenges that come with them, and knowing when to stop or shift directions?
I think that you have some, well, hopefully at least, you have some idea of what your limits are. And I think that if you try new things often enough, you start to recognize like, maybe this is a dead end. Let's pivot here and see if we can do this differently. Because sometimes you're just on the wrong track. You're doing the right thing, but you're on the wrong track. And this is often a thing in design where you almost had it if it wasn't for this little thing, and you just can't get around it. But if you pivot, then you can actually find something that solves what you're trying to solve, but it doesn't look at all what you started out with. But I think that often when things get tough and hard, it's good to stay. If it's not like a survival thing, like we're running out of money next week, then you have to kind of think about your situation. But if it's just that it's tough and it's unpleasant, then it is good to see it through, because that's where you learn and that's where you grow. If you just take the easy road and never encounter any obstacles or overcome them, then you don't really grow as much. And by doing things that are super difficult and overcoming them and getting great results, it kind of builds a trust in yourself and your ability to always be able to master something new. You've overcome things. But if you have a very limited budget and you try the first thing and immediately you grind to a halt and you see everything, just your dreams pouring out in front of you, then maybe you shouldn't just keep knocking your head towards that brick wall. So you have to think about it, but don't. If it's just unpleasant, then I'd say try it for a while longer and see if you can overcome it.
Yeah. Definitely. This is a me question now, just because I'm curious, but was there a process with your team where you all would dive into whatever technique it is that you're using and then rejoin later and talk about whether this was working or not? And was it like kind of a collaborative decision when it came to stuff like that?
Rarely. I mean, I wish that we had all of our shit together all the time. But it's more of a kind of Daniel talks to this person who then we decide and then we shift and then we so it's not as organized as that. But I forgot the question as well, talking about organization. But it was how we deal with where do we take it from here? How is that managed? Was that what you meant?
Yeah, basically.
So poorly is maybe the. But I think that we're at this point maybe just so used to constantly pivoting. Just looking at like, oh, okay, Daniel is working on this now, and Johanna is working on this now, and now she's done with that. Let's pivot over to that, but then have her learn this while he does that, and then So it's very much like that.
We even tried to do our own grooms there for a second, just to.
But we
try
do
it out.
have grooms that we've done that are in the game or
Yeah.
the cinematics as well.
Yeah.
So, but it was very tricky, and Litval is a bit of a master in that field. So it kind of feels like, yeah, this is what I made. You look at this like, okay, I may have a few years left to get to that level. But yeah, if you never do anything on your own, then it's hard to do other things better as well. It's not you don't just learn what you're attempting. You're learning other things, and you never know when that comes back. It's like, yeah, I'm doing this other thing. Well, it's lucky that I tried to do this other thing that other time and almost failed completely, because now we can use that in this regard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Next question we've got here is, did you have different scenes or versions between in-game and cinematics? And if so, how did you optimize between the two?
We avoided it as far as we could.
Yeah.
Sorry, Daniel, you were going to
it's
say.
completely different. I think none of our they sort of overlap a little bit. Some of the cinematics and in game, but you're never like in cinematics scene in game. So we don't really have that issue.
And it was originally in the script where it would be like you enter the scene and then the cinematic ends and you're still in there. It's like, no, I don't want to show this scene with our kind of baked in-game lighting from a new perspective and just pretend it's the same, because it doesn't feel the same. So we avoided all those. You always go somewhere, take a boat somewhere, go through a door, and that's when the cinematic starts, and it ends with them leaving that scene and going into a next scene. So yeah, we sidestepped the whole issue.
Smart, honestly. Next question here is, do you have any Easter eggs of you or members of the team in the game NPCs or companions?
Probably more than I know of.
Not gonna tell.
Oh, there we go.
No.
You'll have to find for yourselves.
I don't think not characters. No.
Yeah, but maybe little things in the environment for people to keep an eye out on.
I think that just dressing the scenes, we do go for a kind of inviting kind of visual style, and I mean that's one of the things we started this with, is we want the environments to be, because as an artist you kind of inhabit the scenes that you work in. So if you work in a dark, moody horror theme, then that's your workplace. So we decided to not go with themes like that, but rather cozy, inviting, and kind of things that you would want to inhabit. And I've noticed that a lot of art dressing leads to the artist like, I'm going to put some little flowers here, arrangement here. Like, Daniel, is anyone going to see the back of that house ever to see those flower beds you planted there, and that little someone has made dinner for his spouse, and yeah, it's like, yeah, got lost in the fantasy there. So in that regard, there may be a few Easter eggs. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love that. It makes the world really feel lived in, right? If anyone comes across those little things, they can envision that there's lives happening beyond just their own protagonist, which is pretty cool. All right, next question here. How many sheets did you go through before finding that the IKEA sheets worked best?
We at River End tend to start cheap and then go up. So.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah, I think that that was what I could drag into the garden without upsetting my wife to test out the equipment at one point, I think, and then realized that hey, these are great, and now they're a bit soiled from the garden dirt as well, so might as well take them with me to the office. I think it could have been something like that. It was definitely not planned or thought through. I could.
Happy accidents, as they say. Let's see. Once you swapped over to Unreal Engine 5, from there, have you worked mostly with lumens, or did you find yourselves having to render in Path Tracer as well?
I think we
Daniel.
tried, but yeah, we've sticked with Lumen. Just the quick
iteration time. Yeah. And there are some things that are absolutely just better looking with Path Tracer, but sometimes if you get into the nuts and bolts of the Lumen engine or whatever you should call it, often there is a solution with a console command or whatnot. Like, okay, I'm getting these shadow artifacts that I'm not liking. Like, have you trimmed this value into this? And then, you try some things and the computer becomes a little bit unresponsive, and then you lower the value a little bit. And it's like, yeah. Now we're getting the results. But I haven't seen anything where we couldn't solve it with Lumen yet.
No.
That's awesome. The animation is absolutely immaculate, starting with another great compliment for y'all.
Thank you.
Do you have any additional tips or advice as to how you maximized MetaHuman to achieve such believable animation, especially facially?
Well, it's we do use Epic's tools for processing. A dual camera setup, I think, is definitely something you want because you build geometry from those cameras. And we just trust Sigtor's rigs and his knowledge there. So. But I think that using lenses that don't distort too much will help you to compare the data. But also something we've noticed is that some people are much better, just like some people can read the room in a way that others have trouble, then reading facial expressions, it's not a one-to-one thing. Like, eyes are pointing this way, mouth this way. And on this side, we have the psychopath. It's like, oh, what happened here? I was just perfectly interpreting what I was seeing. But you had to kind of read the expression on the actor and convey that to the character that you're creating. And some people are super good at that and can find the subtle nuances. Because sometimes there is that you need to get your character you created to do what your original actor did. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. In a similar vein with animation, someone was wondering how much of the end result is motion capture and how much of it is hand animation.
I would say that it's from scene to scene. Sometimes, because we usually get raw data from an entire scene. We don't, because you pay for polished data usually, but we can get the full, since it's no extra cost for Sigtor really to get all the data processed and shove it in there. Then we can get usually we start out from a raw solve, and sometimes that's damn good. And it's like not a whole lot is necessary to do. It could be very minute tweaks to things. Other times it's like, okay, this character is not at all looking like what we would have hoped. And it's you can see that in MetaHuman if you just apply the same animation to two separate MetaHumans. On one, it looks really nice. On the other, it's like, I don't think it looks as believable, and you may need to do some tweaks. Because the way we're set up, if you have a large mouth, then you use it in a way that someone with a smaller mouth wouldn't do or can't do. If your jaw is positioned in a certain way, if your teeth are kind of pointing at a certain direction, I don't know. Then that becomes part of what you do with your face, and sometimes it just doesn't translate. And in those cases, sometimes, I mean, Daniel, you worked with. We usually look at the major features of an actor. What do you usually do when you start out with a character?
Yeah, with especially with Hanna and Alva, I mean, we did look a lot at trying to, capture the, basic features of their faces, but it doesn't really look like them. But there's nothing like totally off, at least, and I think that helps a lot. Yeah, trying to bit similar to
right
to the actors helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, so sometimes it's a lot of polish work necessary. And sometimes we've noticed that for just shots, like sometimes for trailers, a hand animation can be preferable to even involving motion capture at all. If you just want a glance in the direction or something like that, it can be much easier to control to do hand animation on it. So we've been doing that a little bit sometimes, which is and it helps to have someone with a lot of stuff going on in their face. We asked the people from Motion Grinder after the first shoot, and they said like we asked them like, so who do you think will translate best? And it's like, that's Paul. Everyone's like, yeah, that's Paul. It's like, well, how can you know? Oh, yeah. So much happening in his face and so much going on. Like, yeah, that's going to be everything he's involved in is going to be perfect. Yeah, okay. on their end, I mean, it's a performance as well.
Right. That's awesome. Next question here was, how much was it possible to reuse costumes or pieces of the costumes for other characters? Or did you have specific costumes per character?
I think we for our main characters and for the cinematics, they were very specific. Although we did reuse the police costume and for another character and just basically dyeing it black and reworking some buttons and so on. So we did do that a bit. And then for in-game characters, we worked a lot with this basic scans and did variations based on that scan. So definitely trying to reuse and rework things.
Definitely. Yeah. Modularity works for NPCs in particular, so that makes sense. Sorry, Anders. It sounded like you were going to say something there, and then I rudely interrupted you.
No, you said what I was going to say, so I'm like, yeah, okay, yes.
I've got no worries.
Welcome to the team.
Next question here is, what was the process for creating such custom-looking metahumans? If you divulge a little bit of your secrets there.
It was a lot of iterations, and not to talk down on MetaHumans, but it's quite easy for them to have like this, typical MetaHuman look. So trying to really, we look at a lot of references on faces and really trying to. It is hard. Yeah, it was a lot of iterating and trying to come up
You
with
get
something that
lost
would
when you just
unique.
it's like, I think it's really good now, and you would show me
Yeah,
something. It was like,
it's so
whoa.
yeah, it's so
Like,
weird working with faces. It's like you see faces all the day, and you think you have something that looks good. Then the next day when you looked at it, you're like, nope, this doesn't work. And then you slept on it, and then you iterated more, and slowly but surely you get something that works each day, and that starts to feel like a character. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but
no, but
Yeah,
it,
you
definitely.
keep iterating and saving new iterations to go
But I
on.
think that the way you used reference images, I think it's important, because when you can slide different things all across the board, some combinations, and I don't know if it's like a genetic thing that if your cheeks are like this, then your nose cannot be like that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something like that. I don't know. But once you combine two things, it is like, whoa, that looks very unnatural. And maybe it's like something is tied like that.
Mm.
But having references helps.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this is a modeling tip if you were to like sculpt a face, is to always keep rotating and working in every angle. It's very easy to just focus straight forward. You think you have something that looks good, and then you rotate it and it just looks off. It needs to really be work in all angles, and yeah, it's very important to keep
Yeah.
rotating and
But I know
Yeah.
one of our artists, Leo, also does these tweaks afterwards to add a bit of asymmetry to the some of the characters,
yeah.
and kind of custom things as well, sometimes with
Yeah,
scars or whatnot.
we started when the tool was released for the MetaHumans to bring in your own scans directly into the MetaHuman creator. We started actually exporting some of the meshes and then doing like tweaks on the nose if we wanted like something that we couldn't do in MetaHuman creator, and then bring it back in. So that's something we've been testing a lot lately. So
Very cool. This is kind of related to what you're talking about right now, actually, with how did you manage to avoid the uncanny valley, especially when it comes to faces, especially metahuman or otherwise. When you're going with something realistic, it's very easy to tip over into the uncanny valley. So how did you find that balance?
yeah, that's also, I mean, very hard. I think having input on the faces, like there maybe wasn't faces that I did in the beginning that, I mean, this could be something, and then Anders looked at it, this looks way off, and then, oh shit, it does. So getting input from people, does this look weird, or could this be a person? That's very
Yeah, and
important.
it's interesting just what people care about in a scene, and that's the tricky part with characters, that if we have like the scene we showed you now, okay, the door opens and the audience will look at the rooms like, where are we? And does it look nice? Is this realistic? And then immediately to faces. And from there on, any effort put into the background is just lost on the audience. Because you follow faces, you say, oh, what's he going to say now? Oh, what's her reaction to that? And maybe you'll pick up a flower on the way, but yeah, everything is like, focus on the most difficult part at all time. Okay, thanks for that, audience. But sometimes it's, you see things like, yeah, but don't you see how that texture leaves a really strange mark on the side of his temple here? It's like, no one sees that ever. Stop thinking about it. What they did see, on the other hand, was the weird reflection in the eye that you didn't see because you were so focused on the issue that you knew about. So just putting it in front of someone who is not afraid to hurt your feelings, and hasn't been involved in the process or knows what's difficult or not. Because it's there's probably nothing worse than being an animator, because when something is difficult and you screw up, it's not like people are angry. They laugh at you because it's like, ha ha ha, look at that. It's like, oh my God, you don't understand the effort and pain that has led me to this result. Even you should have seen yesterday. And then, yeah, that's the encouragement you get to go to the next day and improve it further. So, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, you need that, because otherwise you won't know. And also, on the other hand, sometimes you're done and you just don't know it. Like, oh, so you are all happy and you thought it was cool? Yeah, we thought it was tremendously cool. Like, okay, I suppose I'm done then. But what about that? I never saw that. Yeah. So, yeah. Take Daniel's advice.
Show it to other people. I'm hearing if it's specifically someone that's not afraid to hurt your feelings and will be completely honest with you if something looks weird. So, children. Show it to children. And they'll let you know.
I tend to show it to my wife, who is not at all afraid to hurt my feelings, but she's she watches Hollywood and Pixar and whatnot, so that's her level of, it's like, but isn't that standard quality? No, that's the best the world's got. And if I show anything that's not up to par with that, then she's like, it looks a bit weird. Like, yeah, but your standards, do you know how difficult this is? I don't know. But yeah, when she likes it, it's very good. So that's having a partner like that could help.
Awesome. Very good. All right, let's see. We've got 2 more questions for you. We're almost there. And then I have a secret question that I always hold for myself at the very end.
Exciting.
But the first one here is, and you talked a little bit about this, but what came first, the story or the gameplay? Or was it a blend of both?
The world. Haha.
Option C.
Yes, the world came first, then came the characters, then came the story, and then came, maybe the gameplay came, at least the rough outline of the gameplay probably came before everything. Okay, I went on a tangent for no reason. But we did create a world first, and then started creating characters that would inhabit that. And then we picked out the characters we liked the most and wrote the story for them, which I thought was the easiest way to go about it, because then everything just gets tied into the world in such a natural way. That can be a struggle sometimes afterwards.
Yeah, I love that. All right, next question, last one from chat, is what was the biggest challenge during this project that you learned from, and how would you streamline that for your next?
It's just like a constant barrage of fires. Whenever I try to envision, it's like there's so many. I don't think there's one thing just stands out in the forest fire that is.
It's all just fire.
I don't know. Some kind of suit that protects you from fire. No, but do you have anything, Daniel, that you?
No, I can, but obviously, I mean, switch to metahumans, I would say was one of those things. We would have had a way harder time completing the cinematics if we wouldn't have done the switch. So.
Yeah.
But I think that, if we're talking cinematics or the entirety of the production, I don't know if maybe cinematics. Tina, was it? But if we would do it again, it's like definitely work with the casting agent and get talent that you that you really need for what you have in mind. But that's kind of not saying doing it differently. It's saying doing the exact same thing again.
But it worked. It worked
Yeah.
well, and so you would do it again.
Yeah, but I think that this time maybe get the actors ready for that. I mean, a movie can be like, yeah, and then you shoot for 4 weeks and then you're done. A game, they're like, isn't the game done? We were here last year and doing things. It must be done by now. It's like, yeah, it can take a while longer to make a game. So just having them ready for that they won't just move to New Zealand and disappear from the map, that they have a responsibility for a large part of their adulthood to work with you.
Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to think about. Awesome. All right. Final question that I have for you is my secret question that I always ask everybody, but I never prep you for it because I want your full, honest answer right
Shocked.
here now. Yes. If you had to take all of your experience over not just this project, but just in general, and distill it down into a single piece of advice that you would like to give to other developers, what would that advice be?
Daniel, you go first.
That's a tough one.
I know.
Yeah, if we're talking for myself as an artist, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Your work, it's so easy to get blind in what you're doing. But getting opinions from not only colleagues, but family members, just like, what the hell is that? What are you doing? Don't you see? That's very important.
Yeah. Great advice.
It kind of ties into what I was hoping to say, and it's more of a games thing. But you need to play test, and everyone knows this. But it's such a, and especially this project has been so interesting. It feels like you have to be a psychologist to really understand what's going on, to see, oh, this kind of this save game didn't really trigger where it was supposed to, and this led to frustration, which kind of led into frustration here, which leads to them feedbacking on this thing that's probably very good, but now they're a little bit upset. It's like how all of that trickles together. It's like, what should we change? How should we work with this? But playtesting on people who are kind of who like what you were doing, because if you're making a MMO game and you get playtesters who kind of don't play that or like that, then that's what you'll get from them, and it's not valid or interesting feedback. So vet your feedbackers, and don't ask colleagues or people in the industry because they know too much. If you would ask a musician, it's like, what do you think of my new? Oh no, it's terrible. Because a musician will always have a different opinion, and game developers are not different in many ways. And also, to an extent, if you're doing anything, it's like, and you're trying hard at it, and someone comes along and does it better, there's this resentment that can build inside of you that can leak into that playtest. Like, I gotta find errors in this. I gotta find faults, and they will when they're in that mindset playing. So find people who are as far away from your production or anything as possible, who are gamers, and kind of look at what you have going and saying, like, yeah, you know what? I can see myself playing something like that. Have their opinion. Because you will realize that they care about things that are not what you thought that they would care about, and they don't care about things that you thought were really important. So that would be good advice, because that's been crucial to us. Like, so everyone's happy here? well, okay, let's move to the next one then. And then other things like, why do you keep doing this thing? I told you not to. Like, yeah, but I forgot. Like, okay, fair enough. Let's see what we can do here. But no, super helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Both absolutely wonderful pieces of advice. So thank you so much for that, for humoring me with my difficult question that I tossed at you at the very end here. We do have a final trailer that we will be playing in a moment here as well. But before we do that, just wanted to wrap everything up. First, want to ask both of you, is there anything else that you want to say to anyone watching, or anything that you might have missed, or do you feel pretty confident with where you're at right now?
Yeah, I want to say that we're going to show you our reveal trailer that came out before summer, but tonight there's going to be something new coming out in the trailer. Yeah, a new trailer coming out tonight. And then shortly after that, there may be some more trailer stuff coming out. So yeah, I don't want to say too much because I don't know what I can say. But it's going to be very soon. More trailer stuff coming from us.
Awesome. So keep an eye out, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to be here today and to walk through the incredible process behind how you've made this really beautiful, stunning animation. And I'm really excited to just play the game. Honestly, when it comes out, everything about it, from what I've heard, is exactly up my alley. I mean, stealth games, wonderful narrative. You've sold me already. So I'm personally very excited, but also just seeing the process behind how you actually built it is incredible. And I have to agree with one of the commenters earlier that said that your team is adaptable and willing to take on challenges. There's so many times throughout this process that you completely pivoted or changed directions and ultimately came out with something that looks absolutely amazing. So kudos to you and your team for being able to pull something like that off, and for taking the time to walk us through it and show us a little bit of your process. Cannot thank you enough for doing that.
Thank you so much. It was definitely our pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
It was great. It was wonderful. And also, of course, thank you everybody who came and watched the show. It wouldn't be what it is without you and your interaction and you being here and hanging out. So I appreciate you being here as well. If anybody popped in partway through the show and you may have missed stuff at the beginning or partway through, no worries, because we post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our Twitch and YouTube channel at Unreal Engine. You can also keep up with us at Unreal Engine on all of our socials to keep up with the latest news, announcements, all that kind of good stuff. And then last but certainly not least, if you haven't already, you should come join us on the Epic developer community, which is dev.epicgames.com, because there we have our documentation for the engine, we have our forums, we have our learning center, which has tutorials from both Epic staff and our wonderful community as well. So pretty much anything you could ever possibly need in relation to the engine can be found there. So if you haven't already, go check it out. It's a wonderful place to be. And trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Oh, we have another stream tomorrow. Project Titan, the sample project that was a result of our huge collaborative art jam that happened earlier this year, has officially launched as of this morning. So you can check that out. But tomorrow we're going to be having a stream where we walk through the project sample with you, talk a little bit about the process of what that was like, reminisce on the good times of trying to get, I think it was like 4,000 artists all to work together on one open world. It was an insane thing that happened. So gonna be fun. Talk about that as well. So that will be tomorrow, same time as usual, 2 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully we'll see some of y'all there. But that's it for today. So one last big thank you to our wonderful, amazing guests, and we'll run that trailer at the end here so y'all can see that. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks. Bye.
I know that you're worried about the war on the continent. But you are my people, and you will come come to no harm.
He's not in any trouble. We just want to talk to him.
You told me you wanted out. You and your brother. You said you're done with this, it's too dangerous, not what you wanted.
Find her. She's here somewhere.
I respected your decision because I thought you respected me and my business and everything I've done for you.
This isn't about me.
Oh, it's always about you, Hannah, and now you've brought the police here.
They're looking for Herman. Look, I've no idea what he's done, and I don't care. I've just got to find him before they do.
It's only a matter of time. You've set things in motion you don't understand, Hanna.